pandemic has provided an opportunity.
Here we are now with an economy in crisis, but with an incredible opportunity.
It's certainly a major crisis, but it also offers us a unique opportunity.
Unprecedented opportunity to rethink and reset.
The great opportunity for reset.
Opportunity for us to reset.
For a reset.
Artificial intelligence, the metaverse, synthetic biology. Our life in 10 years from now will be completely different, and who masters those technologies will be the master of the world.
Well, unfortunately, WHO, like UN and NATO, are under control of whatever name you use. Some people use Illuminati, some say organization, some say the New World Order, whatever it is.
Yes.
In my mind, I have found out that the most of those people who are governing this planet, they are Zionists, and they want to have Jerusalem as the biggest city, or the most important city, the capital of the planet.
Of the world, right.
You know, I used to say, early on when I was a kid, I'd say, when I was a young senator, I'd say, if I were a Jew, I'd be a Zionist. I am a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist.
מסע אותם בשביל שיעשו פה... בשביל לשרת את היהודים. כל הגויים שאתה רואה שיש בעולם, המיליארדים האלה, הם הכל רק בשביל שהיהודים יהיה להם איזה תועלת. עכשיו, אנחנו לא רואים את זה, אנחנו לא יודעים בדיוק. היות ואנחנו בגלות, אז אוטומטי עדיין הם עוד לא משרתים אותנו לגמרי, רק חלקית. כל אחד יהיה לו, כשמשהו יבוא, אז כל אחד יהיה לו... יהיה לו עבדים.
בינתיים, המשיח לא כאן, אז איך הם משרתים אותנו?
אנחנו בונים לנו רכבים, דירות, בניינים. הם בונים את זה. למה? משרתים את היהודים.
אבל יש גם יהודים שעושים את זה.
That is the big threat. I think that's the biggest threat right now. And people have no idea, because people die of cancer, which increases, people die of Alzheimer's, which increases, and they don't even realize that the real reason for the extreme increase are electromagnetic fields, done deliberately also to cause diseases, so-called normal, diminish the world population. And the elite, if I can use that word, which steers the world, and it's not the governments. Governments are errand boys for the elite. So the elite says that, oh, our planet is overpopulated and it needs reduction of the population dramatically, even by about 5 billion, when we are 6.9 billion today. So that, in my mind, is not true. The truth, in my mind, is that they are extremely afraid of the middle classes, which are increasing in numbers, and the middle class is a threat to the elite, not the working class. They call them, well, all of us, they call them cattle. You know, we normal people are cattle for them. And the working class would not start a revolution, but the middle class could. And that's why they need to diminish as much as possible. And it's done, you know, so that people don't realize, like the newest thing is now the swine flu vaccinations, which are toxic and which could kill a lot of people if they take them.
Nobody will be safe if not everybody is vaccinated.
Mapping, different ways of scanning the brain and incorporating those into trials, into the legal system, and having this influence basically how social justice is parceled out.
They're talking about the next generation of technology that's going to basically be used against the public. We're talking about some real Minority Report level Orwellian nightmare stuff here.
You know, the brain is a spatiotemporal device, right? It's a blob of meat that computes.
I think you guys need to hear this, because this is the kind of stuff that they're talking about and the way they're talking about it.
There's a huge government program now to increase measurement technology for neuroscience. As it helps basic research and we can measure the brain better, that will have applications in brain decoding and interpretation of brain function that will be applicable to the law.
They're talking about how they can decode your brain.
What we're trying to figure out is how to decode the signals of the brain.
To figure out what you're thinking.
Anything that is in current conscious awareness can potentially be decoded.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of technology.
What you're feeling, what you're seeing.
If you watch a movie, we can reconstruct the movie, which is sort of a poor, dreamlike image of the movie. We can reconstruct the objects and actions in the movie just from your brain. We can reconstruct how you felt about the movie. Did it make you happy? Did it make you sad? Because valence information is available.
Reading your thoughts.
Thoughts and feelings that you may not be able to verbalize or you may not want to verbalize. And they may still leave a signature in your brain. And we might be able to decode that.
And doing it without your permission.
Those certain forms of mind reading, I think, for the most part today, requires the consent of an individual. If we could get to the point where either you can have an unwilling suspect or an unwilling individual having their brain decoded in some sense, legal systems don't bake in any presumption that we can do that, and so there's no legal protections that could be afforded to you. And so if you look nationally, internationally, at whether or not there are any human rights, if there's any constitutional protections for something like freedom of thought or mental privacy or cognitive liberty, nothing like that exists yet.
Decoding your internal speech.
We can build models of various aspects of language, phonetics and syntax and semantics, and then once you have those models, you can actually decode language. Now, of course, the obvious application of that is decoding internal speech. And once you decode internal speech, then you essentially have the sort of worst possible brain decoding device, or best possible, depending on your view. Certainly the most controversial brain decoding device.
Depends on your point of view.
Victims report dizziness, nausea, headaches, head pressure. Some have been diagnosed with traumatic brain injuries. It's serious. It seems to be expanding. Joining me now to discuss is James Giordano. He's a neurology professor at Georgetown University Medical Center. He's also director of the Institute for Biodefense Research. He's advised the U.S. government on neuro weapons. I mean, it sounds like science fiction, Mr. Giordano, but this is happening. They don't have an official explanation yet, but they have a theory. Can you explain what that is?
That's correct. I mean, it's almost that science fact seems stranger than fiction. The theory is that there's some form of directed energy device that can be aimed with selective targeting that then produces these disruptive effects. So at this point, we're thinking the device is either an ultrasonic device, microwave device, some combination of them to induce injury and some member of disablement as well.
You've been advising the State Department on this issue going back 4 years now to 2017, and you shared some documents with us adapted from what we should be clear is unclassified information that you previously provided to the Pentagon. You've examined the possibilities. You find the most possible or probable causes are, as you say, ultrasonics, electromagnetic pulsing. I mean, what does this do to people?
Well, it can do two things. I mean, the ultrasonics have been known for a while to be able to produce a variety of effects. For example, it creates imbalances within the inner ear, and those disruptions can then cause people vertigo, confusion. But one of the things we also recognize is that ultrasonics can also induce something called a cavitation effect. In other words, little bubbles that can be produced in almost any fluid medium, including the fluid of the inner ear, which can then be translated to the blood supply to the brain, which then produces something very similar to decompression signals, decompression levels, which may have long-term structural and functional implications. Microwaves, on the other hand, work a bit differently, and the way they essentially work is that the brain is really nothing more than an electrochemical organ, and microwaves can then disrupt the electrochemical integrity and break up the network connectivity that's so important to brain function.
Goodness. Well, listen, call you doctor, but James Giordano, we appreciate the work you're doing on this. A lot of folks out there suffering and they need answers. We're going to continue to follow the story.
There are a number of microwave weapons in orbit. We call them vercators. These weapons produce a microwave scalar beam. In other words, this is a new type of technology that operates under a very mysterious wave. It's called a scalar wave. And Nikola Tesla actually described these in some of his early experiments 100 years ago. They remain not well understood, but the Air Force knows how to design weapons that can emit a scalar beam. And it's very much, if you want to picture, it's like a laser beam that's about half an inch in diameter. And it produces a perfectly straight line. And it's collimated. So if you take the microwave, the invisible microwaves from your microwave oven, and then focus it into a beam, that's essentially what this is doing. So it doesn't operate at the exact same frequency. That frequency varies. We've measured it repeatedly at around 3920 to 3930 megahertz.
Okay.
And the tracking frequency that they use on the top of your head is around 3600 to 3700 megahertz. So these two frequencies are very high in the spectrum, but we have tried shielding using many different materials. I've constructed many different boxes and measured the signals inside and out. Unfortunately, the scalar beam is very unique because it doesn't operate like a sine wave, like most your radio frequencies, TV frequencies, microwaves generally are a sine wave.
Yeah.
A scalar wave vibrates in the direction of motion, and that direction of motion is like a very thin silk wire. If you can imagine one that's so fine and so small, it can literally penetrate an atom and never touch anything in the atom. Tesla once said that the scalar waves he was experimenting with could go through the entire Earth and never touch anything.
Wow.
That's how you cannot imagine.
Awesome. Wow.
How fine a simple scalar wave can be. And so it can easily penetrate any type of shielding you put up. The problem that makes it so painful, initially when you're targeted, the first few months are what they call the break-in period. And it's designed to soften up the target. Now, this is words that if you go to our gang stalking tab on our website, we actually have the training manual that is used to teach agents and operatives how to gang stalk and harass somebody. And one of the mentions in that training manual is how the first few months they like to terrify, traumatize to the maximum extent possible to neutralize this person and get them to lay down and shut up. And on many people, it's very effective. The microwave beams can be extremely painful. I'm talking about on the ground in a fetal position, screaming in pain. And there's no way to hide from the scalar beam. What it does is it drags like a boat wake. It drags ionized particles through the atmosphere, and that's what actually causes the pain. The scalar wave goes right through your body, but the particles that it drags along with it, charged particles in the atmosphere, impact your head and will penetrate to certain depths and are extremely painful. So I've got a diagram on the website under the section called scalar weapons. But this is what causes so much pain. And if I encourage folks to look at the tab called microwave burns. We've got dozens of pictures of people that are burned all over their body. And the pictures are disturbing, I caution you, but these come from satellites and cell towers most of the time. The targeting is extremely precise. They can hit the same location. You'll notice a lot of our burn pictures are of lower legs and feet. For whatever reason, they find that to be particularly sensitive and hurtful. At the same time, many people feel the need to cover up. They don't want to tell anybody they're being burned because then they have to try to explain it. And doctors have already been told, the DSM manual says these people are crazy. Well, when you show them burns on your body, the doctor's baffled. He's like, I've never seen anything like this, but I still think you're crazy. So it's
sure,
it's a catch-22. Right? It's a catch-22. But the microwave burns are very real. Some of them happen almost instantly, like in a matter of seconds. We have a person, and I'm not going to use any names, that lives in Arizona that's been burned more than 20 times on her face, and I sympathize with her deeply. Unfortunately, this is not an isolated case. We've got dozens of pictures of people that are being burned. It's the most compelling evidence that we have is to show congressmen, and we did this in the summer of 2019. We visited more than 300 offices of congressmen and senators in Washington, D.C. We showed them these pictures. Many of them were shocked and appalled, and we told them the CIA's behind this. The reaction you get from congressmen is just I'm not going to get involved in that. I know better than to mess with the CIA. They're scared. They don't want to help you.
Our government, by abusing its power and reach, has been turned into a weapon against we the people. And our guest today is an attorney with an organization called Targeted Justice, and the website is targetedjustice.com. Her name is Ana Toledo, and she joins us today because she and her organization have filed an historic lawsuit to try to reel in these broad, dangerous overreaches by what I would consider to be a rogue federal government that is weaponized against the people. Ana, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on today.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate your time and your efforts. So since this is the first time that we've ever spoken, and you're a first-time guest with us here, give us the big picture. Let's start there. What does our audience need to know about Targeted Justice and the lawsuit that you filed earlier this year?
Well, the most important thing that they should all know is that although it is Targeted Justice that is filing this lawsuit on behalf of targeted individuals, which I will explain in a little while what they are, this is important to and relevant to anyone in the United States and in the world, but we are invoking the United States Constitution because anybody can end up in what is called the terrorist screening database. As we have seen whistleblowers going into Congress and speaking when they say people have been placed or have been categorized as domestic terrorists, that is nothing but that they have been placed in this list. And the consequences for the people that become targeted individuals are ghastly. They are horrible. It's a human experimentation program. And the way we discovered, one of the founding members of Targeted Justice discovered it, is that as he was lying on the floor because of microwave attacks on his leg that caused him a blood clot, the sheriffs didn't let the ambulance come into the property saying that they were told there was a terrorist in the premises. And wow. That is, yes. And so while he laid on the floor, while they were securing the area, meanwhile, he only lived there with his 87-year-old mother. And he almost lost his life because that's when he found out, that the relationship between being a targeted individual and being on the list.
So wait a second. So the federal government can, without any due process or rule of law, they can place you on a targeted terrorist list. And once you're on this list, you can be denied basic public services, such as what you just described, ambulance services, potentially medical services, 911 response services, or medical or perhaps even financial services, right? And we've experienced financial deplatforming ourselves, and solely because of our viewpoints, right? So essentially they're saying you're a terrorist if you have viewpoints that do not align with the lies of the current administration. That's where we are.
That is correct. That's you got it completely. It's, we hadn't talked before, but you totally got it. And here's the thing. Like the whistleblowers have been saying that there's a pressure to categorize people as domestic terrorists. It's not just getting, with banks and getting negative effects and bad treatment by businesses, but targeted individuals that are in the category 3 prong, because there's 2 categories. There's a category 4, which we believe it's like, you get microwave with directed energy weapons, and you get what it's called organized stalking, that maybe, you leave your car in the valet parking and when you come back, the key is broken, or you just get your tires slashed out of nowhere, things like that. But then there's the category 3, which are the ones that have really terrible physical attacks. Most of the targeted individuals are on category 4, and some of them don't even know that they are targeted. Some of them might feel like, if you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh God, I'm getting old too fast. It's not that you're getting old, it's that you're getting microwaved. But here's the sad part. We're supposed to be the most free nation in the world. We have the most comprehensive constitution in all of the world. We have a First Amendment freedom of speech that is nowhere in the world has the guarantees that we have under the First Amendment. And so to me, it's all like, it's a hypocrisy because because China is communist, right? So they're not supposed to have the freedoms, enjoy the freedoms that we take for granted. And this is happening in the United States and around the world, directed by the United States. So that's why, it's very sad. People in Europe, for example, they cannot speak about their targeting because they are forced into mental hospitals. One of the things that happens to targeted individuals is that when they speak about these things, they get placed in mental hospitals,
right,
and called delusional, particularly if they are hearing V2K. Well, with V2K, schizophrenia medicine doesn't work.
Right.
Exactly. And most of it is the onset is in the 20s, and it's mostly women. So here we have statistics that it's usually, in midlife that they start getting targeted. It's also a hate crime because our statistics are also that around 66% are middle-aged women that either tend to live alone, because one of the ways they get you is if you live alone, there are no witnesses that can see how they shift things around in your house, or the things that go missing in your house, or the things that get broken. There's no witnesses, and it's plausibly deniable. It's
right.
a very, very complex structure
so
that
this
they have.
This is psychological terrorism at one level. But let me ask you a bigger picture question about the lawsuit. Should you succeed, let's suppose this goes through the court in Houston. Let's suppose it goes then to, I guess, the Fifth Circuit, and then from the Fifth Circuit probably then to the Supreme Court. And let's suppose at some point the Supreme Court rules against the DOJ and DHS and FBI. The problem is there are no consequences for the government. Even the $1.3 billion, I believe, that you are requesting for your plaintiffs, the government can simply print that money, which means stealing it from everybody else, to hand it to your plaintiffs. That doesn't stop this behavior. When we have a lawless regime that is willing to carry out these grotesque medical experiments and psychological terrorism in the first place, why should we expect that they would ever listen to the Supreme Court telling them to stop it?
Well, that's a great question, because I assume you're familiar with MK Ultra on
yes.
Pointel Pro. And the reason this is a hybrid of those two programs. And the reasons those two programs never really ended is because there were no criminal consequences for the people carrying out the torture.
There you go.
And this is where the public has to place the pressure on DOJ, who is one of the defendants, but to prosecute these criminals that torture. You know, microwave weapons are not supposed to be fired on American soil. That's an absolute truth. And so the Department of Justice has a duty to believe victims and to investigate and prosecute those guilty of torture and treason to the United States. And that's exactly what's happening. All the people that get Havana syndrome, it has been concluded by the National Academies of Science and Engineering that you get Havana syndrome after you are exposed to directed energy weapons attacks.
Yes.
There's nothing, you know, it's not like, you know, anything else. That's what causes them.
One of the great tragedies is that no professional organization has censured any of its members for their involvement in these proceedings. Nobody has lost a job as a result of it. Nobody has lost status or prestige as a result of it. And therefore the message is, do it, because you won't be punished for it.
And the question remains, is the government still doing it?
This is not a pleasant world we live in, you know, and there are a lot of nasty people and things in the world, and we need protection from them. But you don't get protection by becoming the guinea pigs of the forces you pay to protect you. And you can't save your mind by having the people who protect you take your mind.